We begin this morning with train troubles. Less than 2 weeks after a deadly train crash at the Hoboken, New Jersey train station, a Long Island Railroad train derails after being sideswiped by a second train on the wrong track. TV 1055's Brian Conybeare explains.
It was very scary.
Ray Martell was just heading home from Penn Station to West Hempstead on the 8:22 train Saturday night.
All of a sudden, train jolted. I jumped into the middle of the aisle and fell down because I was afraid, I knew obviously we'd hit something. I didn't know if there was a tree or branches that might break through windows. But it got real scary.
Ray posted these pictures on social media showing smashed windows, crooked doors, and 3 train cars derailed. Another photo shows seats dislodged by the impact that injured 33 people, including 7 railroad workers and 26 passengers. All 600 people on board were carefully evacuated just east of the New Hyde Park station. The most serious injuries, broken bones, and cuts to the head.
The damage to the train cars is extensive.
Governor Cuomo joined the MTA chairman and Federal Railroad Administration and county officials for a first-hand look at the 2 trains involved.
They sideswiped each other. The question is why?
Investigators say the passenger train was in the right spot, but the yellow track maintenance train it was passing was not.
Why it ended up where it did, violating the clearance envelope of the other track, that's what we need to find out in the investigation.
The LIRR is the busiest commuter railroad in the country, carrying 300,000 people a day. While crews worked to remove the damaged train cars Sunday, service was suspended between Hicksville and Jamaica, Queens. Some passengers were forced to take buses around the derailment site. Ray says he will be back on the train, but he may not sit in his normal morning seat near the door.
Probably wouldn't be here today if I was sitting there.
Joining us now, Veronica Vanterpool. She's the executive director of the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, which examines transportation issues in the tri-state area. And several months ago, Ms. Vanterpool was appointed to the board of the MTA, so she is an MTA board member now. Of course, the MTA runs the railroads, including the LIRR. Welcome to the show, Ms. Vanterpool.
Thank you.
First off, do we know how the LIRR trains wound up on the same track? There were some reports that have not been confirmed that a worker left a switch on the track in the wrong position. Do we know what happened? How this happened?
It's still under investigation. There hasn't been anything conclusive said yet.
Nothing at all, huh?
No.
Now, there have been other LIRR incidents, accidents, mechanical failures. They've all led to big delays. They don't happen every day, but they happen often enough that people are upset with the continuous interruptions of service for the millions of the people who use the railroad. Now, I already hear that folks from the MTA and the governor's office are saying that's why we need a third track. Is that the way you're looking at it?
Absolutely. We need a third track. We also need positive train control to be implemented, which would help
yeah, we'll get to that next.
some of these derailments and delays. But a third track is absolutely necessary. The infrastructure on Long Island was built in 1844 for a lot of our railroad. The population was very different, and right now we have a population that's 3 million, and we need people to get into and out of Long Island a lot easier than they are today.
Yeah, it makes sense, but of course there's a big price tag and there's going to be inconvenience for some towns, even though the governor has said that he will limit that as much as possible and much less than previous plans that were proposed. But the critics remain in places like Floral Park and New Hyde Park, and they say now you're just using this sloppy management of the railroad, the LIRR, as an excuse to get support for the third track. How do you answer that?
I would say, first of all, there's not sloppy management of the LIRR. There's always room for improvement, and we as an advocacy group have spent years pointing out where those rooms for improvement are. But this is a track that is needed. Right now, we're seeing job loss, population loss on Long Island. People are not traveling to the island. We're seeing delays. In fact, we do an analysis every year. There is $103 million in lost productivity just on Long Island because of delays. That's 1.8 million rider hours lost every single year due to delays. For an average rider, that's more than 20 hours a year lost. We need this third track.
Where does it stand right now? We keep hearing that, there'd be construction next year and there are designs and plans that they're going to come out and tell the folks in the various communities exactly where everything's going to go. When is that going to happen?
Well, right now we're waiting for the draft environmental impact statement to be released. That is currently underway. That is a necessary step for any sort of these projects to move forward. Earlier in the spring, a scoping document was released, and there were several hearings, and the public had an opportunity to comment. We also commented. So once the draft EIS is released, the public will also have an opportunity to comment on the project.
Now, some of these communities try to stop it. You have Floral Park's mayor saying he'll sue if necessary. He's hired a law firm. What grounds do they have, and what would be the argument of the MTA to stop any lawsuit like that?
Well, many of these communities have been concerned about property acquisition and takings, and the governor has been very clear that this is a much different project than what was proposed several years ago. Long Island is certainly a community that has a lot of local control, and many mayors are not hesitant to exercise that local control. It'll be interesting to see how this moves forward, if indeed in the court system.
Yeah, the legal arguments could be interesting, but in some ways unproven too. I know that they certainly don't want to go to eminent domain, do they?
I don't think so. I think the governor's been very clear that he wants this to be a different type of project with minimal takings, particularly residential takings.
Okay, so let's talk about something you mentioned right off the top, which really came up with the Hoboken, New Jersey train crash. Now, we're focused on Long Island here, but, you know, it serves as an example. Positive train control. Would that have made a difference with some of the incidents we've seen? We know it would have worked and helped in Jersey, but would it have helped with some of these derailments like the one that just happened on the LIRR?
We don't know if it would have helped on LIRR just because we don't know what the cause of that was yet. There's some incidences that PTC will not alleviate. For example, it cannot stop a collision with a train and a car at a grade crossing, for example. It cannot eliminate some types of human error, but it certainly can reduce the incidences of derailments due to speeding and collisions with other trains.
So, you know, here we see other countries with it, and we don't have it. And it seems like the real problem is the cost. No, we don't have the money for this?
And that's absolutely true. Nationally, this country does not prioritize infrastructure or transportation infrastructure other than our roadways, and that's been a significant problem. Other countries spend 5% of their GDP on transportation. In this country, we spend less than 1%.
Well, if we have the money, are there technological problems that would keep it from being implemented? As you said, the LIRR is 1844, right? That's a pretty old railroad. Does the railroad itself need to be transformed in a lot of ways to even accept positive train control?
Yes, and that's part of the MTA's 5-year capital program. So $2.8 billion of this 5-year capital program is dedicated just to LIRR. And it's to update communication signals and track work and things that needs to be done in order to be ready for PTC.
So when will we see it?
The MTA has said it should be rolled out and done by 2018. And that's actually when Congress has mandated that it be done.
Of course, we've seen this sliding schedules before, and you know it because you're an advocate, and I'm curious about something there that I'll ask you about next, but East Side Access, we've always seen that pushed back year after year because it's an enormous cost and an enormous project. Where's that at? Because that's supposed to help people go into Grand Central instead of having to go to Penn Station.
Well, it's delayed again. The next projected opening date is September 2023. It's more than 6 years behind schedule. The price has ballooned from 4.8 to 10.2 billion.
How does that happen?
It's a variety of different factors. It's a complicated project for sure. It's coming into the densest, most expensive real estate in the country. But then there's work issues and contract issues and procurement issues that need to be better resolved.
Makes you wonder about any estimates that are put out there. You know, I'm curious. You know, you're an advocate. You still are.
Yes.
But that was your main role. Now you're an MTA board member. Yes. How has that changed your view?
It's not changed my view. In fact, I bring a lot of that advocacy into the monthly board meetings, in fact, and ask a lot of these same questions.
Are they glad to have you there to hear this stuff?
They're very respectful of my opinions and my questions.
Right. Because it even took you like months to get appointed to that, right?
It took a year to be confirmed by the State Senate.
A year. Well, Veronica Vanterpool, new MTA board member and executive director of the Tri-State Transportation Campaign and Advocacy Group for Commuters. Thank you for the update, and hopefully we'll see some of these results soon.
Thank you, Richard.
And when we return, as the presidential election gets nastier by the day, how do we talk to our kids about what's going on, and what are kids picking up from politics?